Got that review for the originals coming at you today. Hey everybody, welcome back to Prince's Friend, exploring music through Prince. And just over this past weekend, on the anniversary of Prince's born day, June 7, 2019, Prince's estate, in conjunction with Warner Brothers, released an album called The Originals. A really kind of interesting exploration into the process that Prince had when he would create songs for other performers. This is an entire album of songs that he wrote for other people. And I knew the majority of the songs. There were a couple on here I didn't know, and there were a few on here that I hadn't actually heard before. A lot of these songs have been available through bootlegs and all of that stuff, just like a lot of stuff that is going to end up being released from Prince's estate. However, a lot of it has been cleaned up and remastered and made to sound pretty darn good, actually. One thing I want to say that I really liked about the presentation of the album was that they didn't group together songs that he wrote for certain performers. Like, you don't have all the Sheila E's, all the times, all of the individual groups all lumped together. They are spread across the album, not necessarily in the most logical, flowing way, but at least they're broken up so that you're not getting kind of the same sounding thing over and over again in a row. So I did actually like that decision on their part. And it does include songs that Prince wrote for the time, for Apollonia 6, for Sheila E, Kenny Rogers, Martika, all of these different people. And I know that when it was originally announced, I did post a video where I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this. But honestly, the closer and closer that we got to the release of this, the more excited I did actually get. So let's go ahead and jump into the tracks. I do have a small snippet of each, like normal. So if you haven't heard it, this will be your first time hearing those little snippets. But I really think that it's actually a pretty worthwhile release, even if I maybe would have picked some different songs. But let's jump into the tracks.
I'm a sex shooter, shooting love in your direction. I'm a sex shooter, coming there with my affection.
So an odd choice to start off with Prince's version of Sex Shooter, in my opinion. And weirdly, I don't think that Prince was giving it his all on this demo, because I think I like Apollonia's vocal performance on her version of the song better, and that is not necessarily a statement that I thought I was ever going to say. And it was interesting because what Prince's demo version of the song sounded like was the version of the song that they were rehearsing to in Purple Rain, that the girls in the studio with Morris, and they were rehearsing to one version of the song. Whereas if you listen to the final cut off of the Apollonia 6 album, it sounds a little bit more produced and a little bit more like, hey, this is the final product. So I thought that was an interesting distinction and an interesting little detail that, as creating a movie, it's interesting that when they were in rehearsal, that was the demo version, and when they were on stage, that was the final cut, that was the final performance. Just little things like that I like to hear. So I heard an interview, I don't remember if it was with Jimmy Jam or Terry Lewis, it was with one of them, and I don't remember which one, but one of them said that there's a version of Jungle Love out there that Prince did, and it was the demo version he sent to the group so that they could learn the song and everything, and that it was really good. And you know what? I have to agree with either Jimmy Jam or Terry Lewis, whichever one of them said that. The cool thing about it, though, is that Morris's and Prince's delivery were pretty different, even though it was the same song. So I will say that I don't know if it was necessarily better, but it was a different vibe, and I dug that. I could see adding this one to my playlists.
It's just another Manic Monday. I wish it was Sunday.
So Prince's demo of Manic Monday, I actually dug this one way more than I thought I was going to dig it. It was kind of a broken down version of the song that you would expect to hear kind of in like a smoke-filled bar or something to that effect. But at the same time, I think it's almost too stripped down that it's hard for me to say that it was better than the version that the Bangles ended up releasing. Not that this is a like comparison video, but it's hard not to do that. But I do like this version of Manic Monday, but I also think that Prince wasn't putting all of his voice into this demo, which is kind of a theme throughout this album where he's singing it so that you get the gist of the song and he ain't necessarily going balls to the wall on every track. There are a few that he does that and those tracks are really great. But let's move on.
I know you tell me you miss me. And I want to make love to you.
So on Noon Rendezvous, I think the biggest thing that stood out to me was the breaking in Prince's voice. It sounded great, and he wasn't even really pushing his voice. It honestly sounded like he was trying to get his voice to match where he wanted Sheila E's voice to be, but it was an unnatural place for his singing voice. Like if he had just come out and just sang it, it would have been a completely different story. But in this case, it was breaking his voice in order to try and hit notes that he wouldn't necessarily hit. I think I also missed the heavy keyboards that the eventual final cut of the song did get. So like this is a stripped down version of this song, but it doesn't necessarily highlight anything great in the song itself.
Face, mascara, erase. I wanna look good for you.
Okay, so makeup. I was really hoping that listening to Prince's version of this song would make me like it more. And I actually kind of do like it a little bit. It makes sense why they got Brenda to sing on the final cut, because her voice most closely matches Prince's delivery on this. There were some small things in Prince's delivery that I think kind of puts it slightly over the top of Brenda's, but it's still not that great of a song lyrically for me. Like, the beat I've always loved. I always loved that. I mean, nobody else would come up with that beat. It's just a really good beat. But lyrically, it always left me wanting, and I can't say that this kind of made up for that. So 100 Miles Per Hour, this was the song that Prince wrote for Maserati. And I hadn't actually listened to a ton of Maserati, like in my life. But now I've heard this song, and I've actually picked up the Maserati album. I'm trying to listen to it now. But weird, it's a really darn good track, and I like Prince's version. I actually really dug Maserati's version as well. Honestly, in my ear, it was hard to say which one was better, but you could tell that Prince was not holding back on this demo, and I think that really elevates this track a little bit higher than some of the others that we've listened to so far. But really, 100 Miles Per Hour is a really good song. Like, it's just a great song. Like, if I ever have a band, I'm gonna cover it. But I do actually feel like this cut of the song needed to just be cleaned up just a little bit more. It sounds slightly more degraded than some of the other tracks on here that are really clean. But, I mean, really good song though.
Baby, you're my love, and I love everything you do to me. Yeah. You're my love, and I love when you're around.
Alright, so spoiler, I didn't really listen to any Kenny Rogers growing up, or in my life at any point, or even now. So this is not a song that I knew, but the moment it comes on the album, like, it's an entire shift in tone, especially after coming after 100 Miles Per Hour. Literally, I don't think I like the song. I think it's a little too simplistic lyrically. So it's really nothing spectacular. I mean, it's good and he sings it well, but I don't think that one was for me. Prince's version of Hollyrock is really, really good. Funny thing about Hollyrock is that it sounds like Prince recorded it similar to the way that he recorded Camille tracks, and I've shared that on the channel before, where basically he sings it in a lower tone with the intention of upping the octave later on so that Sheila can get the sense of what she should be sounding like, but it sounds like he's purposefully singing it at that low tone for that reason in this version. I would also say that the instrumentality on the final cut, I think was just the final cut of the song, Hollyrock, had a harder snare that I think accents the beat a little bit more. But I really like Prince's version of this song. Honestly, you just can't get better.
Baby, you're an ocean that's too wide to cross. Baby, you're the cross that's too deep to bear.
So I feel like Baby You're a Trip is the obvious standout on this album. I actually really love Jill Jones's version on her album, on her self-titled album. But Prince knocks this out of the park in almost every way, on every level, in any dimension. His screams, he has low tones, he has high tones, his emotional delivery. I don't have enough great things to say about this version of the song, and yet, honestly, it's so crazy because I really dig Jill Jones's too, so I would almost say that they're equal, maybe Prince slightly higher, but really, I mean, it's such a great song that plays on a lot of the normal kind of cliched lyrics and yet approaches them in a really cool way. It's just a great song. Love Baby You're a Trip.
She wants to leave glamorous life. She don't need a man's touch. She wants to leave the glamorous life without love. It ain't much.
I don't know why, but I love Prince's version of The Glamorous Life, like, way better. I think it really works well in that middle tone that he sings it in. And he's not going for any kind of crazy vocal gymnastics or anything, but the biggest thing for me is that every word is crystal clear. In the final cut with Sheila, I've always had an issue kind of understanding the lyrics when she sings them. Obviously, I've read the lyrics, but I can't necessarily hear the lyrics when she sings it in her final cut. But in Prince's version, oh my god, everything, the delivery is spot on. It's just great. I actually really dig that one overall. Although every time I hear The Glamorous Life nowadays, I always think of the beginning of Sex Symbol with Sheila E laughing. So now every time I hear that, like sax, I just start cracking up. It's crazy.
Gigolos get lonely too.
Prince's version of these time songs, you can totally tell why he wanted to have Morris Day there to deliver this kind of feel, because it was very different than the brand that he was creating in the moment at that time in the early 80s. But Prince's version of Gigolos Get Lonely Too, way better than Morris Day's. And that's not a knock on Morris Day, I think he did a really good job with it. But Prince's vocal range was just phenomenal. He knows he can sing a friggin' ballad, and damn does he sing the hell out of this one. It's such a great version, really makes me appreciate this song more. Like before, it was kind of like, it's an okay song, but actually now, like, I really like this song, like, way more now. So I've actually had the demo for Love Thy Will Be Done for a while, and it's a good song. It's kind of low key. It doesn't really go anywhere. I've said it before. It kind of stays in its lane. I'm actually really happy that it's included here. The bootleg version that I have is very muffled, and they really cleaned it up here, so I do dig that. Obviously, I like it for the beat because Prince reused this beat on One of Us off of Emancipation, so I kind of have a soft spot for this song just for that reason. But honestly, I feel it's an okay song. I'm glad that they included it, but it's maybe not for me. Okay, Dear Michelangelo, hands down, Prince's version of this song is epic. It sounds great. His voice is amazing on it. It just all around brings this song to life in a way that the original just didn't do. I do miss a little bit of like what Sheila E brought to it, but oh my gosh, this version is so good.
Would you like to love me? Would you? Would you like to love me, baby? Would you? Would you like to be alone? Would you like to have me alone?
And after a whole album of great remastered tracks and so much care being given to these songs, we get to Wouldn't You Love to Love Me, which is a good song. You can tell the arrangement is great, Prince is great as usual on it, but the quality of the track doesn't sync up with the rest of the album. Kind of like with the Kenny Rogers song, the entire tone of the album shifts when this song comes on, because you're at quality level here, and actually guys a little bit higher and a little bit lower, a little bit higher, a little bit lower, and then shoom, down here at the bottom, off screen even, you see that. Honestly, I'm happy they included it, but I might have tried to maybe bury it in the middle of the album maybe a little bit, or just replaced it and tried to work a little bit more on it to make it a better, more refined track.
It's been 7 hours and 13 days since you took your love away.
And then the originals ends with Nothing Compares to You. This is a track that's been around for a while. It was actually a year old at this point. It's a really good version of the song. It's not my very favorite version. I did a whole video with some friends about what's the best version of Nothing Compares to You. I will put a link there. You can go check that out. It's going to be one over here. But honestly, I don't think that there was a better track to end on. If they had started with Nothing Compares to You, it would have made it too obvious. Ending with Nothing Compares to You means that they weren't leaning on the success of this as a single already. They were like, look, we want you to hear all the rest of these, and then this one's on there too, but really you want to hear the rest of these as well. And I always dig that when it comes to arranging an album is a whole thing, trust me. But this was probably the best choice they could have made for an album ender. So in conclusion, it's pretty much exactly what I was expecting it to be. Nothing is overly elaborate. Nothing here feels like it got the Prince treatment. They took, the core track that it existed and then they released it. What Prince would end up doing a lot of the time is he would take a track that he had recorded, and then when he was really timed to really record it for real, he would embellish and he would add a bunch of craziness and a guitar solo here and a thing over here and all that stuff. And obviously this didn't get that. Most of the tracks here, they felt like they were incomplete. They felt like they were a template of some sort, which in a sense, they were, so that makes sense. Is this a worthwhile purchase, though? Is this a worthwhile release from the estate as the second posthumous album? You know what? I have to say yes. You know what? I think my initial reluctance to accept this album doesn't stand true anymore. Again, like I said, the closer we got to the release, the more excited I was. And listening to these tracks, I actually really love the majority of them. There's a few on here that were a little ho-hum for me, but the majority of them are really cool to have in good quality, not bootleg version. So definitely a great album. I would say maybe 3.5, maybe 3 3/4 stars. I don't know if it's quite a 4, but I would definitely give it high marks, and I would suggest that other people go pick it up. There's a link in the description if you want to pick it up from Amazon. Of course, obviously after the title exclusivity deal is done. So what did you guys think of the originals? Let me know down in the comments. Also, don't forget to check us out on social media at Princess Friend YT on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Check out the Patreon, patreon.com/princessfriend, where you can support the channel for as little as $2 a month. And check out the website, princessfriend.com, for Prince news and other resources. Otherwise, may you live to see the dawn. I love you all.